Hello, I'm Patsy Miller. I'm a volunteer with the Martin County Historical Society, and we do oral histories recorded for the Martin County Historical Society, and they are converted to DVDs for resale. Today we're privileged to have two of our Williamston guests from the fire department. With us today are former Fire Chief Tommy Price and current Fire Chief Jimbo Peele. Open your eyes. Did you hear that? Okay, you can edit that. We're happy to have you here today. And open your eyes, Tommy, because we are looking at you face to face with your. We'd like to pick your brain about the early years in your life, in your personal life, and your professional life. And we'll start with Tommy because he has seniority as a retired fire chief. Tell us where you grew up, Tommy.
I grew up in Janesville, and I went in service at 17 and came back to Janesville. And about 3 years later, I moved to Williamston, and that led me into the employment with the town.
Tommy, tell me a little bit about growing up on the farm. What was it like? What year was that?
More years than I like to talk about, but really it was back in the 30s, 40s, early 40s. And we didn't have a lot. Nobody had a lot then. But we had no tractors. I don't reckon there was a tractor in the community. We'd done all the farming with mules and plows, walking behind them. And most of the time from sun up to sundown. And we might slip off on Saturday evening and come to Williamston to see a movie. Maybe had a quarter to spend, but we had a big time with it. One thing about those times, the people, we helped each other. That's the only way we could get through it. And excuse me, on one occasion, we had a person to get sick. One of our neighbors got sick and couldn't tend his farm. And I counted as high as 18 mules out there at one time. The other neighbors had them in his farm. And so we were close, the neighbors were close, and we didn't have much, but it was good. And I wouldn't...
What else did you do besides work on the farm?
That's about all work. You cut wood in the wintertime, you farm in the summer.
What did you do on Saturdays and Sundays?
Saturdays and Sundays, as I said, on Saturday evening, might get a chance to come to Williamston. On Sundays, most of the time, a group of us boys would ride our bicycle to Williamston from Janesville to swim about 2 hours in the swimming pool they had here. And then ride them back to Janesville. That was a big weekend for us.
Where was the swimming pool located?
Let's see, it was behind the old W.B. Parker residence. You know what I'm talking about? It was on Watt Street. And
Parking lot down there?
Right. Parking lot down there.
Was it integrated?
No. Not at that time it wasn't.
What did it cost you to swim for an hour?
10 cents an hour. And we thought that was big money.
It was pretty exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And
yes,
breaking
it
the
was.
work routine.
Yes, it was.
What about Sundays? What were they like as a farm boy?
Well, you got up in the mornings as regular. The first thing you done, you went and fed the stock. Mules, hogs, whatever. And go to church. That afternoon, we'd gather and just talk or just do things together, play games or whatever. It was, we didn't have a lot of pool rooms or anything like they have today to go to, or shoot pool, anything like that. So we made our own toys or whatever.
What were those games you played?
Oh, I don't know.
Hide? Hopscotch?
Oh, not hopscotch. I
Keep
believe
your
that was a
can?
woman's game. Yeah, hide and seek, I believe they call it now.
Kick the can?
Kick the can, bull in the ring, I know you don't ever remember that. We'd draw a ring, and one would get in the ring and the other one had to throw him out. That was a big thing. Got a lot of exercise like that.
That was a guy's game.
Right, absolutely.
What was Sunday dinner like at your family?
Well, it's the same old thing. Mother got up, cooked dinner, collards, backbone, ham. We had so much ham, I got tired of eating ham. We didn't have the money to go to the store to buy a lot of extra things, so we raised most of ours in the garden, raised our own meat. And, we just lived life every day, and it was a great life then.
It was a good life?
It was.
Got good memories.
Yep.
What was going to school like in Janesville?
Well, for what I went in Janesville, it was good. We of course played our games in the recess part we had. The school was good. We had good teachers. We had very dedicated teachers, and that school has produced a lot of school teachers, professors, 2 doctors that I know of, and it was a real small school, but it done a lot of things for the people, and some of those people would come back to this area and treat their own neighbors. It was real good.
Did your brothers and sisters help you when you were starting to school as a youngster?
Yes, some did, but
They held your hand in first grade?
well, most of them. I was. Let's see. I was next to the baby, I believe, and a lot of them were grown and gone, or grown and married, and so I didn't have but 1 or 2 around there older than I was. But yes, they would help me if I needed it.
How did you entertain yourselves, you and your sibling?
By just playing our own games out in the yard or whatever. We lived in a house one time with a real tall house, and it was off of the ground, I reckon, 3-4 feet. And I had my regular playhouse lined up under there. I remember that. I'm talking about when I was 4 years old now. And my daddy was a logger, so I made me a log deck and had what they call them oxens now. We call them steers. And they were I'd take 2 pint bottles and tie them together and make me a yoke, and I'd pull me a stick around like a log. Things like that. We had a good time.
Use your own mind to
Right.
be creative.
Of course, nobody had the money to buy a whole lot of toys then. And I think by being poor, we were a lot closer together.
Pull together?
Right.
There was right much harmony in your family?
Well, yes, especially the ones that were living there or close. A lot of them didn't live, right close to us.
You ever get any scrapes with your brothers and sisters?
Well, me and my brother had a couple, but he was bigger than I was, so he always won. Until I came out of service, I won that one.
Tell me about your going into service. After high school, you went into service?
No, I quit school in the 8th grade, I believe, 8th, I think, and went to service. Went in service, and I finished school while I was in service. So I went in 1946, in December 46, and I came out in December 49. So 3 years I spent.
Where was your area of your service?
I was in the Air Force, and I was stationed, after training, I was stationed in Fort Worth, Texas, Carswell Air Force Base, and flew flight engineer on a B-29 Superfortress. And of course, we went everywhere then and back. I enjoyed that. I wouldn't trade anything for that experience.
What prompted your return from the service?
Well, actually, I suppose my mother and daddy did, because they were old, and my daddy got disabled at work, and I had to come back and work and help them, and that was my main reason for getting out of service. I would have retired there had it not been for things like that.
What kind of work did you do back in Martin County?
Well, I worked at Gaines and Kirkman Lumber Company and warehouse until I quit and came to Williamston, and I started driving a truck, a long distance truck. And after that, I decided I had enough at 30 years old when I worked with town.
And you stopped driving a truck?
Mm-hmm.
You got fed up with that?
Well, yes. Yes, much
How
so.
did you have to get a job with the police department initially?
Well, that was kind of an unusual story. I was driving the truck at the time. I was walking down Main Street one Saturday afternoon, and I saw Chief Jernigan, I think, was coming down the street with a police car. I said, well, now's my change. I flagged him down. He said, get in the car. I told him I wanted to talk to him about a job. He said, well, let's ride around the block. We rode around the block, come back, I was hired. So I came to work on December 10th, 1959 with the town as a police officer. And after 2 years with the police department, maybe a couple of months over, I don't know, they started hiring paid men on the fire department. And I put in for that and was transferred to the fire department. So after about 7 years, they decided they'd hire the first paid chief. And in 1971, September 1971, I was appointed as the department's first paid fire chief. And I retired in 1991, which was 20 years ago. And have been retired ever since.
Who was the first paid fireman?
First paid fireman was Marvin Coltrane, I think.
And the first paid fire chief was?
Me.
You. How did Darrell Taylor fit into this?
He was the second paid man hired.
Mm-hmm.
He was hired after Marvin.
Mm-hmm. So you have a daughter, Donna,
Yes, I do.
and a grandson.
Mhm.
I guess they make important impact on your life.
Very much so.
And Joyce keeps you straight.
Oh, yes, yes.
She's a good girl.
I couldn't have found one better.
You did all right. Thank you, Tommy. Just hold your place, and then we'll switch over to Jimbo now and find out a little bit about our current fire chief. Jimbo Peele, we're glad to have this opportunity to talk with you today about your responsibilities as fire chief. And you've been here how many years?
32.
32 years. As chief,
No, as
as a fireman.
as working as an employee with the fire department.
How long have you been chief?
19.
19 years. That's a pretty good stint.
Yeah.
I guess you've seen some changes. You and Tommy have seen a lot of changes in firefighting technology.
A lot of changes. Seen a lot of changes in how we operate as a department.
You have administrative skills. Tell us about that.
That's primarily what my duties are, is administration, and that is managing the budget of the department, the policies, and the procedures and all that. We have shift officers that actually manage the personnel, sort of manage the captains, but they look after their shift. But that is primarily my job, is administration.
Work out the schedules,
Sort of.
the training programs.
In administration, you find folks to do that for you. So we
Right.
do delegate that out.
You delegate all you can.
Yeah. It's
Well-
mostly finances, purchases and things like that.
Who's your assistant?
We don't have an assistant.
Who are your chiefs?
We have 3
I guess they're
shifts.
called captains.
They're
aren't
captains. We actually have 3 shifts, and each shift commander, which is a captain, are the person that would be in charge in my absence. And it would be the on-duty captain at the time. So we actually have done away with the assistant chief's position since I've become chief. So, and that is a position that we're actually trying to get back.
Tell me some of the services that are provided by the fire department at this Williamston Fire Department.
Well, we obviously take care of fires. We also run emergency medical services, which includes the transportation as well. A lot of fire departments do run EMS, but they don't transport. We are one of few that do transport as well.
Are your men trained for that?
Oh, certainly. Our personnel are trained at all the levels that is necessary to provide those services that we do provide, such as rescue, which in probably Chief's old days, it was called the rescue squad, which that was when you would go out and take care of a sick patient and carry them to the hospital, which in current times the term rescue is the rescuing of victims and trapped or entangled in something. So rescue's got a little different definition. It's medical emergencies is what you do if you got a patient sick. So we do rescue work, which several different disciplines of that. We do hazardous materials, emergency response. We're pretty well rounded for our size.
What is a hazardous response? Elaborate a little bit on that mission.
In short terms is what we call our hazmat team and our hazmat response, and that is chemicals or substance that get spilled or leak. Let's say a traffic accident with a tanker of chemicals releases its product. We have trained personnel that could go out and actually stop the leak, contain the product until it's a safe environment.
Maybe they better go to the Gulf, see if they can help with that fire.
That's a pretty big deal down there.
And you do other things too, like emergency training.
Well, everything stems around the training. We are our own delivery agency for training now. Most training that are here has come through the community colleges in the past. But we are our own delivery agency now, certified by the state to provide the training to our own people. So we do that. That's just something we just started doing.
Do you require all your staff to be certified?
Sorry.
I notice you have about 18 full-time employees and 75 volunteers. How do you dovetail that?
Sometimes it's a challenge, but we have a good relationship, and that's what it's all about, is relationships. There are 18 of us that, include myself, that are employees of the town. There's 5 per shift. We have 3 shifts, plus myself, administrative assistant, as well as captain of fire prevention. And our volunteers range from individuals that serve as volunteer firefighters, as well as volunteers who serve as EMTs. But a good majority of them do cross-train and do cross-provide services. So some of them are both certified. So we do have quite a few people. And that number includes our volunteers that are on our hazmat team. That our hazmat team is a total of about 42 people by itself. We serve 25 counties for northeastern North Carolina as a state team, so it takes quite a few people to do that.
Takes you out of the county, provide these services.
Right.
So it's a regional team.
We're a regional team contracted with the state. to provide that service. And we became a regional hazmat team, one of 7, back in 1995. Been doing it ever since.
How about an anthrax scare?
We would get a call to that, or at least get a response to a suspicious package or a suspicious product, and go out. We're trained and have the supplies and the technology to hopefully get a sample, secure the area, which would already been done by law enforcement, hopefully. And our first mission there is to get a sample and package the product. If we have enough sample, then we could possibly do some analytical work on it, see if we can determine what it is. Our first mission is to get enough to carry to the state lab. And,
You have a laboratory here?
we have instruments on our truck that we can do some analytical work. But our first objective is to get enough for the state lab. Then if we have enough left over, we'll do it ourselves. We've had quite a few requests for suspicious packages, so we take care of that.
As a native of Williamston and a graduate of Williamston High School, you must know a number of your staff members personally.
Sure, it's like a family.
It's like a family. How does that factor into your administrative responsibilities when you need to pump up morale?
And that can be challenging also, but we've got a level of respect.
Mutual respect is a big factor.
I think we can be friends, which we are friends, but we can also be business also. And I think the majority would tell you that when it comes time for business, it is business. When it comes time to play, we play.
How about when the deputy was killed a few months ago? How did you handle that?
It was a stressful time for us as well. We were very involved in the scene after the shooting, immediately after the shooting, actually. But it really drew the departments together. Whether you were in law enforcement or in fire and EMS, we were all public safety that day, and we leaned on each other, and we made things happen, and we helped out as much as we could.
Let me address this question to both you and Tommy. Do you find community service work to be gratifying?
I do.
Yeah, yeah.
When you go home at night, that's the thing, you know you've done a good job that day. Hopefully,
Absolutely.
if everything's
You
going
go home
fairly
with a
well.
satisfied mind. That's right.
Would you agree to that?
Yes,
Chief?
I think anybody in this line of business is here for that reason. And I think we can all tell you that it's not definitely for the pay, even though that's good and it helps us manage, but there's a certain satisfaction of doing the type of work that we do, and almost a need to provide the service to the community. And you feel good about it.
Does the community fund this operation fully?
Taxes. We're a municipal department.
I know hazmat comes from the state, but your other funding?
Yeah, well, we're a municipal department that is funded by the town. It is a town department, so it is fully funded by the town. We
Like to get your fire taxes from the county.
Yeah, we serve in we have a rural, we serve in a rural district also, and they pay a fire tax for that area.
During Tommy's early years as chief, Tommy, you experienced a big tragedy out on Highway 17 South. Tell us a little bit about that wreck.
Well, I can remember it very well because it was my first fire as fire chief, very first one. Yes, we went out, the driver lost his life. had a highway patrolman that almost did. And with the help of good work of the firemen, we managed to get the driver out before he completely burned. And then we let the fuel burn out. So we were close to a big pond, and it was better to let it burn than it was to run in the pond. So finding out later that that's what the NFP EPA would have done. But I reckon that's about the worst one. That, of course, I do remember one with 5 children burning in it. I was a volunteer fireman then at that time. But you don't take things like that lightly. It bears on your mind for a long time.
In the early days, Tommy, you saw facilities that burned pretty thoroughly.
Well, at that time, we really didn't have the equipment and the training to handle such fires. I would say from the time Jimbo has been chief, this department has been made into one of the best departments in the county. I mean, in the state. I put it in statewide, and I think they have, to me, some of the most modern equipment that can be bought. And I
And what was
certainly
the
am proud of
equipment
it.
that you had to work with?
On the wall over here, you'll see 2 trucks over there, a 56 Ford and a 63 Ford truck, and
Were they pumpers?
pumpers, both of them. And we didn't even have a tanker at that time, I don't think. But then once they appointed me as fire chief, I believe I did buy a few, air pack, 4 of them, to for the people that could get in a house with smoke, and not to have to do like we done and put your nose on the floor so you could breathe. And that
So
was,
they had the equipment to breathe
right,
while they went into a fire.
self-contained breathing equipment, yes. And that was the biggest
That was a
start
big
I
step,
reckon on
wasn't it?
changing. Yes, it was. And so we came along a little at a time, and I think we got, 2 trucks and a tanker while I was here. And Jimbo has continued to do a great job at it, I think.
How long were you chief, Tommy?
20 years.
20
years and 2 months to be exact.
Well, let me ask Jimbo, what kind of equipment do you have to work with in contrast to what he just related, please?
Well, what we've done is we've kept the number of pumpers that is required, which he was required to have as well. But we typically we'll run a pumper 25 years, and then put it on a plan to replace it after 25. And sounds like a long time, but that's the reality of the type of equipment that we use. We've added, I don't know that we've added a whole lot other than a ladder truck. We added that, but we're maintaining the same number of pumpers, which is 3.
More modern.
They are a little more modern, fairly new. But just time has taken where we had to replace them, and every piece of apparatus that we have has a date on it that when it reaches a certain age, then it's time to start looking at a new one. And we've been able to, with the support of the town board, maintain that plan. And we do have quite a few pieces of apparatus, so it does take a plan to, keep them up and keep them new, or at least keep them maintained and running. And so we just modernized some things, and technology, there's so many more computerized. Our trucks now run off of computers, and they're so electronic. And not saying that's a good thing, but it is the way it is. And so there has been a lot of changes in the technology of the old engines versus the new engines. But they all do the same thing. You know, they still pump water and we still put fire out the same way. And there's been some advancements in the type of gear that we use, but not that much. I mean, it's still gear that we protect our people. It was talking about air packs, which is interesting because back, I'd say in the 60s, even some 70s, you wouldn't use an air pack unless you really absolutely had to. And now, you don't even get off a truck unless it's on. And it's just, I think the times in our business has looked more at the health of the
71.
individuals, and it's all for the safety of the individuals. So we try to do it all safely.
I'd like to add something to that, if you don't mind.
Please do.
In the advancement of the fire service, fire department here. We've had Jimbo and myself both have been lucky to have some of the best employees. People that loved it as good as we did and didn't mind going in and doing what they had to do. And I've got my hats off to the employees here.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. That's
That means a lot.
the success of this
Dedicated.
department is the employees.
Absolutely.
Well, who do you answer to other than the town board of Williamston?
That's who I answer to.
How about at the state level? Who is your advisor there,
We
supervisor?
back up on the town side. We do have a town administrator that
So you
is my
communicate
first.
with him?
He's my first line supervisor, so to speak.
Mhm.
And but the type of government that the town has, we're appointed by the board, and we answer to the board, work for the board.
Right.
The contract that we have with the state is through North Carolina Emergency Management, and we have a program coordinator that looks over the program at the state level, and as a coordinator, he coordinates the efforts of the contract. But the program itself is it's in general statute that there is a program, so that there's some laws that pertain to the program that require certain committees, and that's who is sort of the overseer of the program, is the committees. And I chair one of the committees currently, but we have a good relationship with state emergency management, and have so for a long time.
Do they pop in on you from time to time?
You know, they don't have any reason to do any surprise visits. They'll come in from time to time, and we do an inventory every year. We have to do annual inventories on equipment that is supplied by the state. We have probably, I'd say, close to $4 million worth of inventory that belongs to the state that we have to be accountable for. So.
I want to address one more item before we wrap this up. I'm very interested in knowing how you deal with stress management. It's a serious issue in daily life. It's bound to be serious in this type of work.
It is. Shortly after I became chief, what wound up being a good friend of mine, who was the human resource director for the city of Washington, and the fire chief in Washington had taken some training for critical incident stress management, which is the stress levels of individuals who do emergency services. And she put a meeting together, called me about it, and I was interested enough, I went. And from that meeting, we formed through the years, and that's been almost 20 years ago, an association that is Eastern Carolina Critical Incident Stress Management Association, and it provides services to emergency services people, firefighters, law enforcement, telecommunicators, in the event of a bad incident, that we can use people who are trained that we call peers to go in and help these individuals cope with the tragedy. And the first training I took was probably a couple years after I took the chief's job, and we had an incident, or I had an incident that was extremely stressful, where we had 4 kids die in a house fire, or apartment fire. And so I knew firsthand the stress level, but I also had learned what to do about it. And we immediately did what is called a diffusing, which is where everybody involved gets together and actually talks about it, which is pretty helpful. But that was a major tragedy. The next level is a debriefing, which does include mental health intervention, but they got to be trained in public safety personnel's type of.
Are they brought in from the outside?
Typically, peers are brought in from the outside, but we had one, and I can tell you firsthand that it absolutely works. I'm a believer in it. We support it. We support the efforts of it. Still involved with the association. We are actually the host of the group. We have an 800 number that folks call it from all over Eastern North Carolina if they need that service. We coordinate it out of here. But it's a valuable tool because we're all human. Things bother us. These guys that do the work every day, they see the bad. They see just as bad of things as that you can see, and it's how they cope with it that matters. The supervisors are all trained to recognize it if they see a sign of it, and we act upon the need. If there's when Deputy Charlie Brown got shot, that was a need. That was a major need, and we coordinated efforts to do multiple debriefings that week, and that was a big part of the coping piece of that.
So your immediate support group takes action first, and then it goes up as needed, as the intensity or need is needed.
Once we decide to do it, once you do a debriefing, we typically would get outside peers, and peers would be people that do what you do,
Right.
as well as trained mental health people, and it's a comfort level knowing that people that you're talking to know what you're talking about. They've been there, they understand fire, they understand EMS and rescue and law enforcement. So it's a valuable tool, and it works.
I want to thank you both for cooperating with us. There's no pay involved. This is all community service work. And I'm personally indebted to you both. Thank you, Tommy.
I appreciate it. I don't want no handshake.
Oh, and Jimbo, thank you. It's
very
been
much.
fun. Thank you very much.